Hello, this is a special update from the Human Frequency. Happy holidays, Happy New Year. We're right between Christmas and New Year's right now, and we've got a lot of snow in Southern California and having a really nice Christmas season. And we're ready for 2017, and from what I'm hearing, 2017 is going to be a pretty wild year. I guess the world's going to end or something. I don't know.
Something like that. I'm surprised it hasn't already.
I know they said 2012, but it didn't happen. So.
And Dane Wigington says it'll end in like 3 months anyway, so
I thought it already ended for him.
I don't know.
I don't either.
Let's just put all these scenarios into a hat and pick one, and then that's what it'll be.
Well, did you have a nice gluten-free Christmas?
Thanks for asking. I've called BS on the gluten-free movement so many times off the air. I may as well just do it on the air.
You're going to get a lot of people angry.
And I don't care. I don't care because...
This is one of those things you're not allowed to talk about.
Well, we're allowed to talk about anything we damn well please, which is why we're here. We have this platform and we just say whatever we need to say. And I really don't care if I get any kind of negative feedback because this is something that needs to be talked about. It's something that no one's saying. And it's funny you mentioned that because I actually pulled up an article off naturalblaze.com, and apparently the exact title of this article is MIT Scientist Explains Why Modern Wheat is Causing So Many Health Problems. And it's by this doctor, Stephanie Seneff, or however she pronounces it. She's a senior research scientist at MIT. And she figured out, apparently she went to college to figure this out, that the glyphosate that's sprayed on the wheat crop is causing a lot of health problems, specifically things that are contributing to the advancement of celiac disease. Duh.
Well, it's nice that a mainstream scientist is mentioning Roundup because I thought that all of those guys were paid off not to do that. So Roundup, glyphosate, that's one of the most carcinogenic chemicals on Earth, and it's sprayed all over GMO crops like corn and soy and canola. But they've also been spraying it on the wheat, which is non-GMO. A lot of people tell me that that there's GMO wheat, but there isn't, not yet. They actually have started rolling out a GMO potato. So there's a few crops that are GMO. Most things that people complain about being GMO are still bad because they're sprayed in pesticides, but there's only a few where they've actually tinkered with the genes. And anyway, wheat is not one of them, but they're still spraying it with the Roundup pesticide.
Yeah, and a lot of people may be wondering at this point, why would they spray wheat? It's a non-GMO crop. Well, there's a couple of reasons, and apparently the main one is that when wheat is exposed to toxic chemicals like glyphosate, it kills the plant after harvest, and it causes more seeds to be released, which means higher crop yield. So that's a main reason that it's being done. But anyhow, this lady, Stephanie Seneff, she did her research in conjunction with another doctor, Anthony Samsel, and got some interesting statistics off of this. Apparently, the usage of glyphosate in the United States since 1974 is... Do you want to take a guess, Sharon?
Oh, how much have they been using since 1974? Mm-hmm. Am I guessing how many gallons?
In pounds.
No, I honestly, I could not even. I'm sure it's in the many millions of tons. I don't know.
3.5 billion pounds. That's billion with a B, as in boy, as in billion.
I can't even imagine that. What is that in tons?
Well, there's 2,000 pounds in a ton, so do some quick math that I'm clearly incapable of doing, and you have the answer. So that's one stat. 67% of this usage of that total has been in the last 10 years alone. Mm-hmm. So it's really been ramped up, and that's no surprise because GMO food is one of the many ways that the parasites are trying to put a stop to human consciousness and human ascension. And this is one of the many ways that we are held back.
Yes, well, we didn't have a gluten-free Christmas, but we did have an organic Christmas. So it's very important to avoid the pesticides and the GMOs. I think more important than to avoid gluten. I think that may be missing where the problem's coming from.
That's exactly what you took the words right out of my mouth. Why don't you do this report instead of me? I'm kidding. But actually, a very important thing that I have to point out here is that this chemical may be sprayed on non-GMO crops, but never on organic crops. So if you're just buying things that have the non-GMO Project Verified label on it, that's good, but to get them organic is better. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, this brings up another issue of, is that even doing anything? Because the USDA is overseeing it, and these people are about as corrupt as humanly possible.
No, the goal is...
just as much as any other organization. So what does that even mean?
I think the goal is to be buying your produce from somebody you know personally, somebody in your town or community, and to start growing our own. But I know that's easier said than done, but I think that's the ultimate goal, is for everyone to know where their food's coming from.
Hey, if we can do it...
Well, we can't, but, maybe one day.
Well, we're getting there.
I haven't been able to do that yet.
We're getting there. We're getting there. We have some good sources. We have
an egg source. That's a start.
Exactly. Sorry, I couldn't resist. It's Christmas, all the bad puns come out right at the end of the year, and then you start a new year, and you're all boring and as you ever were. But no, this study, I think, concludes with the best part, is a direct quote from this doctor. She says, quote, "I just don't understand how the United States government refuses to acknowledge that we're basically slowly poisoning and killing our population."
That one kills me.
I do.
She's killing me.
How the hell do I know this? And this supposed advanced scientist
Scientists don't know. Scientists don't know the law. They don't know government, and they don't understand too much outside of the realm of science. So just because they're scientists doesn't mean they understand what our government is.
What is our government?
Our government is a corporation.
I shouldn't say our government.
Right, it's not ours.
Yeah.
It's a corporation. The government, the United States, is a corporation.
This is not just an exaggeration, by the way. We're not being melodramatic here. It is literally a corporation, like legally.
No, I like that sketch on Kids in the Hall where the company AT&T Love was getting bought out, and everybody's freaking out in the office. And the ladies, the secretaries, they say, which company bought us out? Was it the Japanese? And the boss says, no, Japan is a country. And they said, was it the Americans? He goes, actually, yes, America is a corporation. So anyway, this was back in the 90s, in around 95. So people have known about this for a long time. Well, what's happening in 2017? I think that the best source for that would be The Economist.
Oh, I was going to say us, but I guess The Economist is a close second.
Well, what did the globalists have planned for 2017? Well, let's check out the 2017 predictions from The Economist. Now, they had a pretty crazy cover again this year, just like they did a couple years back, and we're going to get to that. But for now, I went to their website, and here's what they say. Canada embraces globalization, and this is going to be to share prosperity with other countries of the world, and of course also for the betterment of the environment. I read the article, and when it comes to the environment, the only environmental issue mentioned was global warming, and that they would be taking part in lowering CO2 emissions, around their country. And that was the only environmental issue mentioned. And I know of many much bigger issues going on than that.
Like what?
Like geoengineering is one that many people talk a lot about, and which we tackle every day. And fracking, that's a terrible environmental problem. I would say what's going on in North Dakota with the North Dakota pipeline and with all of that oil pollution everywhere, I think that would be a bigger problem. So anyway, we're going to get to global warming because, of course, we're in The Economist right now, so you know that global warming, CO2 emissions are going to get a lot of mentions. They mostly call it climate change. That's what the way they say it now. Okay, another thing that's going to happen is society will trust machines like they do people. For example...
Oh, goody.
Uber is having the self-driving cars now. I would never get into a self-driving car. It's just, I don't like getting in an airplane. I don't trust the pilot. I'm not going to want to get into a self-driving car. Who knows what's going to happen? I know my computer has problems.
Yeah. It's just a matter of time.
I mean, what if somebody hacks in and makes your car crash? What if they don't like you? What if they know that some major activist who's gotten a lot of publicity for their work and is maybe against some major corporations got into this Uber? Don't you think there would be a way that maybe they could? Am I being paranoid?
No. I'm thinking of that scene in Scarface where they put the plastic explosive underneath the car of the diplomat that they need to kill off for their boss, but then Al Pacino sees him with his kids coming in and he just has a change of heart. It's like, no way, kill this guy, whatever. That's one thing, but not his whole family.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, but then he got shot with automatic weapons and died. So that's where that mentality.
Well, they
leads.
killed him ethically.
Well, actually, the kill shot, I believe, was a shotgun blast to the small of the back. So how ethical is that?
That's awful. All right, moving right along. Another issue the Economist is bringing up is unsustainability. This is another article they had about limiting CO2 production, and the most interesting part of it to me was that in The Economist, the globalist publication, they mentioned that Trump is a climate change denier. And I was really surprised. I mean, not that I'm surprised that he says that, but I would be surprised. Why would the global elite with a climate change agenda put a climate change denier into office? I'm puzzled over that.
I figure that since I've already called out one source of BS, I may as well just call out another. But in this sense, I'm glad because, the gluten-free thing, a lot of people are still completely in the dark about that. Obviously, they're not allergic to gluten, they're allergic to glyphosate. But
as is every living thing on Earth.
Yes, that's right. Thank you for pointing that out. But in this instance, the issue of climate change is one where people are actually starting to wake up and see that the idea of anthropogenic global warming is complete and utter nonsense. And it's like, why are we even talking about this now? And I mean, just a few years ago, you'd be burned at the stake for saying that.
Still today. I mean, I feel weird even saying it. I've recognized so many environmental problems. I used to really, really be afraid of global warming, by the way. Like years ago, I thought it was really a threat. But
then they realized that burning people at the stake maybe caused more global warming. So they put the kibosh on that one in a hurry. But no, seriously, man-made global warming is so obviously false, and I can prove it in less than 10 seconds. Do you know how it's false? Because the mainstream media is talking about it. That's all you need right there. But there's many other reasons for it. But that's the main one. So there are many organizations that claim to care about climate change or global warming or whatever you want to call it. They obviously don't. Actions and words are not exactly in dovetails here. So what's going on is that this selection process has put in charge of the United States corporation a president that has a viewpoint on something, and it makes no difference what his viewpoint is. He's still going to do what his orders are. You don't get in that sort of position if you don't carry out orders. So really his viewpoint is ostensibly irrelevant.
Well, don't you think that maybe this is all just to get us to continue talking about the climate change argument? I would say putting a climate change denier in office, as they say, would continue that debate so people are not thinking about other environmental issues that are huge, like the radiation from Fukushima that's still affecting the world, like fracking. It's destroying water supplies, like all of these issues.
You make a good point, and it could just be a gigantic red herring, just a distraction, and they can use him to spout things that are completely untrue, like that the Earth has been warming since the Earth has been cooling since 1998, or some just completely
It doesn't
made
even
up
matter.
thing.
Warmer, cooler, what's the difference?
There are variations.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's not.
It's such not a big deal.
It's completely irrelevant, and it is just a distraction. And he's gonna, like I said, he's gonna say a bunch of nonsense that's not true to make the people who are waking up and questioning this completely nonsensical malarkey about that humans are causing the planet to warm up at an alarming rate. It's complete nonsense. And he's going to say complete nonsense to make the people that are waking up and realizing it look ridiculous. But I don't think it's going to work ultimately, because it's just, it's like when we encounter people spreading things that are not true about Oregon Energy or the legal name or whatever.
It's torture.
Thank
you for reminding me.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
It may be torture, but ultimately it's not going to really do anything, because the people that get it, they're not going to be, dissuaded one way or the other by this incorrect information. But the people that have no mental capacity to understand it, will they even be fooled by the lies, or is it just they're not even gonna, it's not even gonna get that far?
I think they're more worried about their gender identity in 2017. And
you're killing me, Sharon.
let's get back to what the Economist says, because they know, right? I mean, they've planned this out. It's all in the can, right? Okay. So they talk a little bit about women taking powerful positions in corporations, like evil corporations like Coca-Cola. I'm just going to...
Evil corporations?
Yeah.
Come on. Department of Redundancy Department.
Exactly. But they talk about women taking these positions of control in these corporations. And I don't know, whenever people are talking about men doing this and women doing that and getting into gender, and we got more of that coming up too, it's just, to me, it seems so irrelevant in the world of business. If it's a man or a woman executing the orders, what's the difference? Because they're not involved in commerce; they're living men and women. So a different business entity, okay, with a female who is the name holder of that entity.
Yeah, the name holder has no bearing on on anything.
Maybe I've gotten a little obscure here, so let's take a look at what's going on with identity in 2017. Now, the word identity is not really supposed to be used towards living beings. So we've learned about our business entities, and an entity can be identified, but a living man or woman can't. So I would say if we can't be identified, then what is our identity?
ID, entity.
So
those two words, ID, entity.
Okay.
You can only ID an entity,
I
not
feel like-
a living man or woman.
So I feel like this is confusing because there's a lot of talk about identity, and people are talking about gender identity, racial identity. There are many of these ways that people identify.
And Westways, the AAA magazine, is talking about identity theft. Like, oh God.
Well, it's time to stop picking up your parents' magazines.
I know. We're about 30 years too young to be reading that.
So anyway, there's an exhibit. So I'm going to tie this in because there's an exhibit going on in LA, which totally goes along with these ideas that are being put forward by the global elite, and I'm sure it's sponsored by them. It's called Identity. It's by Timothy Greenfield Sanders at the Annenberg Space for Photography. And they've got ads all over LA. So when you're driving around, you see different celebrities. Chris Rock is featured, Neil Patrick Harris. Chris Rock is on the black list, right? He's a black guy. He's identified. They have a Latino list. They have gay people, transgender people. So we have Margaret Cho is on there too, I guess, because they want a Korean on there. They're just being really specific, like they're separating people by category. And
when you said blacklist, I thought you meant that he'd been like banned.
Right. Oh, see, that's racist terminology.
I know.
And then they had somebody from the trans list. So they're showing different human beings of different racial backgrounds, gender identity, or gender, however you want to think about it. And to me, this just is all about separation. This is all about,
Yep.
it's a false identity because you can't, it's hard to explain it, but human beings can't be identified. And identity is really something that's only used in business. So I feel like all of this is just to set people against each other and to bring up something that is not relevant in the world of commerce where we interact. In our personal lives, our gender identity is personal. It doesn't need to be part of business. So I know a lot of people complain about the elite throwing the transgender issue in our faces. And what I have to say to that is that these are all personal matters that really don't, it's not my business what somebody's gender identity is. You know
It's
what I'm
not
saying?
anyone's business.
It's no one's business. So one of the main stories in The Economist, which I thought was interesting, was Jamie Shoup may become the first American to be issued a passport that neither has a male or female on it. And Jamie Shoup prefers to be called MX, Mix Shoup, instead of Mr. or Mrs. Now I'm gonna just deconstruct this article piece by piece because there's
Please deconstruct this.
The first problem here is that Jamie wants a genderless passport. Passports shouldn't have a gender on them anyway.
Well, yeah, that's the first issue. What is a passport?
So Jamie is transgender or doesn't really regard him or herself as a male or a female, somewhere in between or somewhere a little of both. Now, that's Jamie's personal life, and that's none of my business. And Jamie's passport is a travel paper for Jamie's business entity because you cannot identify Jamie. Each one of us has a legal name, which is our name that is used in business and commerce. And our own names and our own lives as humans have nothing to do with commerce. It's
Completely
all business.
separate
It's separate. And mixing it all up is a very, very confusing thing that we all have to learn is going on. But this is a huge fraud that's been committed over a long period of time, and very few people understand what their legal names really are and who they really are. So let me break it down using Jamie Shoup as an example. So Jamie wants a passport without male or female. Male or female shouldn't even be on the passport. It's a travel paper for Jamie Shoup, a business entity. Jamie is not Jamie Shoup.
And there are other things that should not be on the passport too, such as height, weight, eye color, etc.
So Jamie wants to be called MX Shoup instead of Mr. or Mrs. None of us are a Mr. or Mrs. None of us are a Mr. and a last name. A last name doesn't belong to a living man or woman. We have a family name and we have a given name. The first, middle, last name, that order is a business entity. So there is no Mr. or Mrs. Shoup. Okay, so that doesn't exist at all. So this man or woman, Jamie, is very gung-ho about getting this all political, but it's not political. It doesn't have any place in business, commerce, or politics, which is all the same thing. Okay, so there are companies that have allowed, now listen to this wording, allowed citizens to change their legal gender. In 1972, Sweden allowed citizens to change their legal gender, and the Netherlands did so in 1985. And since 2015, Ireland asks for gender one considers themselves to be on forms. Now, again, this doesn't belong in commerce. Any forms we fill out is business. That's commerce. That's not having to do with us as living men and women. So, again, there's no legal gender. There's no legal gender, and a citizen is an employee of a corporation.
That's right.
So it's the wording of it is saying that, I think they're saying that because these living men and women are citizens of the corporation, that they do have a legal gender because their living being is all tied in and mixed up with their business entities. Right. All right.
Which is an employee of that corporation. Which is why the phrase sovereign citizen is an oxymoron.
It's an oxymoron.
It doesn't exist.
So the article finishes up to say, quote, activists will push for states to recognize their right to describe themselves as they wish and seek to show all the ways that people can be people. Gender is a poorer identifier, than say, height or eye color. Okay. Activists will push states to recognize their right to describe themselves as they wish. They have the right to describe themselves as they wish now.
That's right.
They don't need permission.
No,
This is
but,
ridiculous.
But like you said, because they have been tied in with this legal name, everything's so scrambled and mixed up.
They can't make
heads or tails of it.
They can call themselves whatever they want. I think the mistake people are making is thinking that the gender really has anything to do with these forms and passports and all of these pieces of paper that are issued by the government. The gender has nothing to do with it. So, to finish up with this issue, the gay marriage debate is kind of a moot point too, because marriage is a business contract between two business entities. When Jordan Maxwell said that you are a corporation, when you're a man and woman walking around married, that you are two corporations walking together, that's actually not true. Their business entities have a contract. That's the marriage. They are a living man and woman. They are not in commerce. Mm-hmm. So because of that, if a gay couple, each of them registered their legal names as business entities, I don't see why they would not be able to have those entities marry in any state. So I think anyone can get married.
They would have
have their
it would be
contract.
It would be predicated on having that legal name registration already done, because when it's not done, they're out of compliance, and basically anything that the corporation wants, they have no say. They have no legal standing.
Right. And I know these are very big concepts, so for more information on it, definitely check out this page on Scribd. That's SCRIBD.com. And the name of the page is a business entity called Douglas Joseph Herrick, Herich. Douglas Joseph Herrick is a registered business entity, and the name holder of this entity explains how it works. His name is Doug, and he puts out great instructions on how to do it. But this is something you've really got to read about. It took me over a year to understand it after I did it. I'm still learning every day the implications of this, because this action you take in the 3D world of registering your legal name as a business entity frees you. And so it has implications on higher vibrational levels. And I can't even explain it to you in words. It's something that you start to feel and experience, and it's a deeper connection with God and nature as you understand who you are. Mm-hmm. And you stop thinking that you are a servant to a master, that government that's supposed to be your servant. Yes.
Well, something I want to add here is that you have to take the time to do this, and you have to take the time to do it right. You cannot just sit and think that you're going to ascend and be completely liberated in 2 hours' time. It doesn't work that way. It took us over a year to fully understand this legal name registration concept. It took us time after time of making mistakes, not just in how we spoke about it, but in actions that we took. And you have to take the time to understand it. And by the way, the Scribd page, you must sit down and look at it on a computer. If you look at it on a phone, just forget it. Just stop right there. It's a waste of time. It's not going to work.
You have to be able to concentrate. You have to be able to concentrate. If I listen to this recording that we're doing right now, a year from now, I wonder if I'll catch mistakes in the way I worded this. This is why I don't like to give advice on registering the name. I just defer you to Doug's Scribd page, which is great. But I have done it. I have helped others do it, and I do know how it's done, and I do have a basic understanding. But I feel like I'm still learning it on a spiritual level, and I think that that's ultimately the understanding that one needs to really use it. So that all came from a transgender or a person who is both male and female wanting the government to recognize that. There's just really no reason for that entity to recognize a living man or woman's gender. It really has nothing to do with it. See, we need to remember our personal lives are personal. And I feel like this, not only is it getting all mixed up with the business entities, it's also things like Facebook and Instagram and these ways where your life becomes completely public. it's really, really great to have a personal life it's separate from the public eye and it's separate from the world of commerce. It's really important.
And I think it's great. Well, I'm speaking for myself, but maybe I can speak for the both of us, Sharon. It's really great to not be on Facebook, to not be on Twitter, to not be involved in any of these very problematic sites that are contributing to the problem more so than they are contributing to the solution. And that goes on so many levels. That's not just the type of the way things are being made public, as you say, but what it's doing to people's attention span.
I know. It's terrible. So, there's an 18-page document called Everything in Commerce is Fiction on the scribed page that I mentioned. And you really have to be able to read 18 pages. Can you do it? I like reading 18 pages. To me, that's like a short essay because I like to read books. But it did have a period of time where reading books became more difficult, and I had to kind of train myself back into it because the life, even this is not even with a cell phone, this is just from the computer. The computer lowers your attention span. I mean, being able to click around on hyperlinks to reading an article and they link to something else, you click on that before you finish the article, so it's easy to lose focus.
That's right. And the thing that Doug reinforces time and time and time again in this document and on his page in general is you are not that legal name. You and that first, middle, last name are two completely different things. And he repeats it over and over again. And you see why, when you start to understand this concept, you see why it's repeated so many times, is because that's the most important thing. Getting the living man or woman and the legal name all tied in with each other creates so many problems. And doing this registration fixes all of it.
That's right. And I know it sounds confusing, so just, take your time and unscramble your mind because we've been really heavily programmed.
It takes a complete 180 in thinking, in terminology used, in virtually every aspect of your life. You will have to undergo changes that take time. These things take time. There's no way around it. There's no shortcuts. There's no easy, quick thing you can do. I think we talked many episodes ago about Truth Burger. people,
well,
people
word
want
came up from that. Actually, I got that from the video of somebody on YouTube who Doug says is not a good source on information on the legal name, and I agree with him on this because.
But this was a funny reference.
But now I'm remembering that beware of people who say something like "lose the name," and just say that's not you. You can't do that. You have to register the legal name. You can't just say that's not me or lose the name. If you don't have the name, you don't have a game piece to operate in commerce. You can't have a bank account. You can't get a rental property. You can't do anything. So
it's your
you
game
have
piece.
to have a legal name.
It's your game piece that was given to you on the day you were born to operate legally in commerce. That's all it is. And without it, you can't function, but you need to know how to use it properly.
Let me just say also that there's a lot of misunderstanding about things like the legal name. And there's a lot of putting blame on the elite. And I know people do this with everything. Like they're spraying us with chemtrails, for example. They're feeding us GMOs. Okay. They don't spray you with chemtrails if you have the energy devices you need to clean the air. And that's anyone could do that with Organite. 2, they do not feed you GMO foods. You feed yourself. No one's feeding you if you're an adult. So feed yourself non-GMO, healthy, organic food. Now,
so you have to take the time to figure these things out.
There's a lot of confusion, and people are blaming the elite for the legal name. They say that the elite have imprisoned us with our birth certificates. And they call the birth certificate a death certificate. It's not true. We haven't been imprisoned by the birth certificate. We've been given a legal name, which is a game piece to operate in commerce. If we don't register that legal name as a business entity, then the name holder is the United States. So they can tell your business entity to do anything they want because there's a contract.
That's right.
When you register it and you become the name holder, then that business no longer has business with the United States.
All prior
So,
contracts are severed. You become the name holder, not the owner.
and this is
because a
not
living man or woman can't own anything. You become the name holder.
this is not about anarchy. This is not about anti-government. This is only about being in compliance and operating legally in commerce. That way, you stay out of trouble. Now, that's a lot more to talk about in the future, but that's just the basic beginning, and we bring this up a lot, and Holly Marie explained how she registered her legal name, which was really inspirational that someone else understands it on this level, and we'll be speaking with her more about it. So there's going to be a lot more on the legal name. But going back to these misunderstandings of what the elite are doing to us, as if they are doing anything to us, we're doing it all to ourselves.
That's right.
And we need to wake up already and recognize what we're doing here. Now, the Economist cover this year is another creepy one. It's got the tarot deck, and it's got the cards that are kind of changed, the images are changed from the original tarot deck. If you I typed on start page, The Economist 2017 predictions, before you even get The Economist magazine, you get Vigilant Citizen, who did an analysis of the cover.
I love that comes up first.
I know, it's funny. So I looked at their analysis, and it was interesting. You know, I don't agree with everything on there, but I could tell you a little bit about it, which is that the tarot deck, the use of the tarot deck is an immediate reference to the occult, and the elite are very, very much engaged in occult rituals and part of secret societies. The Rider-Waite tarot deck was created by A.E. Waite, who was an occultist who had been in many secret societies. So the tarot deck is occult. And the first card is the Tower, and it shows the Tower of Babel burning from being struck by lightning from above. And there are bands of Christians and bands of communists facing off at the tower. Now, Vigilant Citizen says that this may mean globalists or liberals versus religious conservatives. Now, I don't know if I see it exactly that way. Do you have a take on this? The communists and Christians facing off under the burning Tower of Babel?
Well, all I can say is that I would want to be pretty far away from that sort of spectacle, and maybe have a lounge chair and some organic popcorn.
So you're not interested in the spectacle, getting involved?
I am, but I prefer to observe human carnage from a distance,
Well-
or at least that's what the court order says to do.
Well, I don't know that those disputing bands were fighting each other or just demonstrating. It looked like they were demonstrating or marching. I don't know that it is necessarily the globalists versus religious conservatives. I think it's all the same thing. So I think it's sort of like the Republican-Democrat thing, the liberals versus conservatives. It's
more
sort of
more divide and conquer tactics.
I don't necessarily think it's anything to worry about. I don't know. I'm not too worried. Are you?
You sound like Kruger from Seinfeld. I'm not too worried about it.
Whatever. So next comes the Judgment. Okay, so the Judgment card shows Trump. He's being depicted as king of the world. The issue is called Planet Trump, after all. And so he's sitting on top of the world. Okay, well, he's the king of the world now. I think that's about right. That doesn't matter to me. But now the world is also depicted. The world card shows monuments, art, and an Egyptian pyramid. And Vigilant Citizen says that the monuments represent the influence of the occult elite on society and, quote, claiming to be the guardians of the mysteries originating from ancient Egypt, passed down through secret societies such as the Knights Templar, the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, and the Bavarian Illuminati. The elite has been the secret force behind profound cultural and political changes. I would have to agree with that. I agree with that.
That's a fair assessment.
Here's where I really start to differ from the analysis here. There's a card called the Hermit. This was my favorite card. I took this card in a very symbolic way because I don't know if necessarily the occult elite is planning how the world's going to go in 2017 or just fulfilling a script. They may already know the outcome. According to Harry Dean Stanton, the actor who
we consult for a variety of things.
He's in my favorite movie, Repo Man. and he plays like somewhere around 60-year-old repo man who is educated Emilio Estevez. Okay. Anyway, we just watched this movie again, and I really enjoy it. But I listened to the interview with him, and he just says he's so philosophical. He's kind of sounds like a nihilist, but he's so philosophical. I love listening to him. He says it's all in the can, and so the interviewer would say, "Well, why did you make the decision to do this movie or to do this?" And he said, "I did. What does it matter? What's the difference? It just happened that way. It's already been written." So he doesn't see free will. And actually, as we're learning, that there may not really be free will. This might just be a script. He says it's just like a game. Life is a game. Mm-hmm. I've heard that many times. It's not real. He says this is all an illusion. So I don't know. Harry Dean Stanton is a very philosophical guy.
And that the so-called choices that there are so trivial anyway. There's nothing. We have no say in the more grand aspects of how things are played out.
Yeah, exactly. So he's saying it just happens that way. So perhaps the occult elite, who do know a lot about scripture, they know a lot. I mean, they are satanic, but they do know the Bible.
They've done their research.
Yeah. Perhaps it's already playing out. So this Hermit card really struck me, because I don't know if it's necessarily them saying we're doing this to you, or hey, maybe there's another side to things. There's a resistance. So the Hermit card shows down below, the Hermit's up on a mountain, and down below are protesters holding signs against the TPP and the European Union, and they've got signs that say stop or no. And the Hermit is above them holding a staff and a light, and he's standing on the mountain. Well, the mountain is obviously a tree stump, a giant tree stump. It looks exactly like Devil's Tower.
Mm-hmm. And we urge you to go back into our YouTube archives and check out our report that we did, 2 reports that we did actually, on the video on YouTube titled "There Are No Forests on Earth," because Devil's Tower is featured extensively in these, and to see it come back into our lives once again in this format is very interesting indeed.
So in the tarot, okay, the Invigilant Citizen, he explains this card. Manly P. Hall says that the Hermit in tarot represents secret societies, which have shielded the light of ancient wisdom from the profane. If wisdom is exposed to ignorance, it would be extinguished. And I can kind of see that. I mean, if you just tell anybody about orgone energy, it's not really a very effective thing to do. I mean, they're just going to say that it's a bunch of BS. I've had people tell me that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
or the legal name.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really tough one. So I can understand why, you wouldn't want to expose the ancient wisdom to the profane. But here it says, the light represents our divine nature. And through the Hermetic life, which is renunciation, we can quiet our minds, we can ascend to higher levels of consciousness. And in this tarot card, the world, there's the earth at the bottom, and the earth is cracked. So that's not a very nice thing to say, right? That's like saying that our world is broken, which is, that's what it appears to be at this time. But the earth itself actually is shaped a little like a stump in this picture. You'll see it looks more like a stump than a globe. And there are other tree stumps. There's another flat tree stump, and then there's a broken tree stump. Again, if you look at There Are No Forests on Earth, you'll see what we're talking about these giant ancient tree stumps. It's pretty heavy stuff. So this was featured on The Economist in the Hermit card. So you've got the protesters down below screaming and yelling for freedom. Who are they begging for freedom? Their masters, the government? And again, this goes back to the government is just a company. They are not your master. Mm-hmm. And so these people are just screaming and shouting for freedom and holding their signs. No, stop. I know that when I tell the chemtrail spraying plane, stop spraying, I'm yelling my head off. It doesn't really stop. Although if I use energy work against it, it does. But
that's different.
But if you're just like yelling your head off saying, stop spraying me, they're not going to stop spraying you. So,
or even worse, please stop. Please stop killing me. Please
You
stop harming my family.
So these people are definitely appealing to someone other than themselves, whereas the Hermit has gone up onto the mountain into seclusion. He holds the staff and the light. The staff represents the wisdom, I think. The staff is knowledge. The light is wisdom. So those are two things. Okay.
And I like being in isolation in the mountains.
I know, I like it too. So I kind of see myself like the hermit, whereas I used to be like the protesters below. I used to be marching and protesting and yelling and screaming at the government to do something for me. And then what everyone wants is peace of mind. Everybody wants a peaceful life, to be left alone. The hermit has learned that through the life of meditation and seclusion, introspection and research, that's actually the key towards what all those people down below are yelling about.
Everybody does want the same thing, but so few people realize that happiness and peace and tranquility comes from within, not from without.
Well, I think that's the most important thing we need to remember in 2017. And I think it's going to be a very, very interesting year. A lot of great changes. You're going to hear a lot more about issues that you didn't hear that much about before. If you think that this last year has brought up more issues to the forefront, just wait. So 2017, it's going to be as tumultuous as The Economist says, but I don't think it's going to be with the war and the destruction. I mean, of course, they've got the nuclear mushroom clouds and everything on their cover again this year.
Yeah, truly.
There's a bunch more cards I didn't go over, but I went over the ones that were the most meaningful to me. And I think this is going to be a great year.
Yeah, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. It's going to be pretty off the hook. And when you said Planet Trump, I think of Sean Connery on Celebrity Jeopardy saying, "I'll take Planet Rump for $300, Alex."
Excellent. Well, we will be back in 2017 with our regular show once again. Thank you for listening to our special update from the Human Frequency, and Happy New Year.
You can find us on thekembo.com and all of our great links on there. Happy New Year, and we'll see you soon.